Preface. Amber walked graciously down the aisle. Bray, spellbound, focused on her. She looked beautiful. The crisp white wedding dress, reflecting the sun that shone through the stained glass windows of the tiny church. For a moment, Bray almost forgot that there were other people gathered for the wedding. So intent had he been on his bride-to-be. Sitting on either side of the aisles that Amber passed were faces Bray knew all too well. His grandparents, his uncles and aunts, family members, many from other parts of the world who had come to witness this special day. But most important of all, Bray exchanged a look with his parents, his father nodding in understanding and support. They looked so well, healthy again. Bray's mother dabbed a tissue to one eye, emotional and proud of the day their elder son was going to marry, setting off on a new chapter in his life.
Nervous?
Martin whispered in Bray's ear. Bray turned to his younger brother, looking immaculate in a black tuxedo. Martin, what are you doing here?
I'm your best man, remember?
No, Bray responded.
Oh yes, brother.
Martin smiled coldly, fixing Bray's tie, adjusting it to perfection, a trace of venom in the tone of his voice. Stunned as he was to see Martin, Bray's attention once more fell on his bride, as Martin indicated Amber approaching the altar ever closer. With each step she took, Bray's heart almost faltered. He was overcome by it all. His love for Amber, the monumental day of the wedding, and the fact that so many dearly loved ones, Martin included, were somehow there to experience it with him. Behind Amber, her two bridesmaids followed, holding the long trail of the wedding gown in their hands. Their faces beaming bright smiles of their own, Patsy and Chloe were thrilled to be involved in the special day of Amber and Bray's betrothal. And then she was beside him. Amber looked up to Bray as he lifted the thin veil off her face, so she could see into the eyes of her husband-to-be. The delight on her expression was clear for all to see. It was her smile which had always captivated Bray. With that one longing look she gave him, her eyes locked on his own, her expression one of contentment, peace, togetherness. If he could freeze a moment in time forever, this would be it. Her gaze, her smile spoke volumes about the love she felt for him, reassuring him that they would always be together. No matter what happened in this God-forsaken world, everything would always be all right.
This is a day that will long be remembered.
Tai-San spoke up loudly to the assembly. Bray stared absently at Tai-San, amazed also to see her there, presiding over the ceremony. But there she was, like his brother Martin, his parents, the dearly loved friends and family who were all there around him. She was very much real, wasn't she? Or had Bray's memory betrayed him? Was he losing his mind? He certainly began to doubt his senses. He thought so many of the people had perished, yes, died. Was he now in heaven?
It's okay,
Amber whispered softly, clutching Bray's hands in reassurance. Feeling a little more at peace, Bray focused again on Amber, putting his faith in her, like he had always done before.
We are gathered here today for the union of Amber and Bray.
Tai-San continued.
Two spirits drawn together, destined to be united for all eternity.
Bray cast another glance at Tai-San. Beneath her smile, he noticed her eyes seemed to be cold, vacant.
Amber, do you take Bray to be your husband?
Tai-San asked.
I do.
Amber said, gazing once more longingly at Bray.
And Bray, do you take Amber to be your loving wife?
Amber waited for Bray's answer. The words she was obviously so desperate to hear, yearning in her heart from the very depths of her soul. The doubt about what was really happening resurfaced in Bray's mind. He had spotted Dal sitting in the audience. Amber's best friend from the days before the adults were wiped off the face of the earth. Dal, too, had met an untimely end. What was he doing at the wedding?
Are you all right, brother?
Martin asked quietly, so the assembled crowd could not hear.
Do you take Amber to be your wife?
Tai-San repeated once more, in a monotone, her voice almost robotic. Certainly not the spiritual and emotional Tai-San that Bray had known from his past.
Answer her, Bray.
Martin shouted out, seizing Bray by the arm. Squirming to get out of Martin's iron grasp, Bray was horrified by the realization that Martin was no longer wearing the immaculate tuxedo as before, but had turned into the visage of Zoot, complete with a leather jacket, goggles resting on his black cap, his hair long and scruffy, his eyes burning in manic intensity.
Do you or don't you take Amber to be your lawful and loving wife?
Tai-San asked again, an element of impatience and threat in the tone. Let me go! Bray shrieked out, desperate to escape from the hold of his younger yet powerful brother. Zoot clung tightly, his firm grasp restricting Bray, struggling to get away.
You're not leaving. You're staying put, brother.
Zoot yelled contemptuously.
Well?
Tai-San probed, trying to contain her anger.
Do it!
Zoot shouted. Were they going to forcibly put a wedding ring on Bray's finger? Unable to free himself, Bray was powerless. Looking on at Amber, Tai-San, the assembled loved ones who gazed impassively from the aisles, ignoring his pleas for help, assistance. Amber reached into her wedding gown, and rather than presenting a ring, she now held a long medical syringe in her hand.
Oh, I do. I do, I do, I do.
Amber repeated, carefully moving the syringe into position above Bray's arm.
Till death do us part.
Power and chaos.
Zoot roared, urging Amber on, a look of complete madness in his darting eyes, fierce with energy. Amber, no! Bray shouted out. But it was no use. Amber suddenly plunged the needle into Bray's outstretched arm, Bray yelling out in intense pain as the syringe penetrated deeply into his vein. Please help me! Amber! Bray cried out, desperate. Calmly, Amber pulled back the top of the syringe, the needle gradually drawing up blood. Terrified at what he was experiencing, Bray felt his heart racing, and he was overwhelmed with nausea at seeing Amber taking the blood sample from his arm, examining it coldly as the syringe filled up. Amber! Bray called out, trying to make contact, get through to her. It was hopeless. Amber ignored his pleas, focusing on the syringe. Martin, help me, Bray begged, looking now to his brother to see if he would help get Bray out of this nightmare. But Zoot still held onto Bray tightly, refusing to yield.
Keep going.
Zoot insisted to Amber, more blood being taken out of Bray's arm, entering into the syringe. Why? Bray cried out, tears welling up in his eyes at the cold, calculating nature of it all. The unwillingness of anyone to come to his aid. The brutality being bestowed upon him by those he cared about the most. His friends and family, Amber, his loved ones who didn't feel the same way about him, tearing him apart. Bray was feeling faint, increasingly lightheaded, yet he fought to keep consciousness, to listen to his brother's explanation for the macabre turn of events.
You are me, Bray, and I am you. We are one.
His pulse rate is high, Judd spoke calmly. But from his tone it was clear he was concerned at the health of his patient. Bray was laying on an operating theatre table, a reality space visor attached to his face. Though he was strapped down, his body convulsed, shaking, the nerve impulses causing his fingers to twitch rapidly, his head thrown from side to side by invisible forces. He was attached to a bank of monitors displaying his vital signs, pulse rate, temperature, blood pressure. 2 girls stood nearby, wearing reality space visors, the shorter of the 2 holding a long medical syringe in her hands, removing more blood from Bray's arm. "It's getting dangerous," Judd insisted. Dressed in white, Judd was like some mad scientist, his eyes now gazing at the complex instrumentation all around him as he stepped away from Bray, examining the equipment readings. "That's enough, for now." The taller of the girls, Eloise, agreed, reluctant to end proceedings, but submitting to the advice of Judd. Removing the reality space visor from her face, Eloise shook her head, readjusting to being back in reality. Her cold blue eyes surveyed Bray. That had been an intense session. They'd really gotten through to Bray that time. Pleased with her efforts, Eloise smiled, stroking Bray's hair reverently. Taking the reality space visor off her own head, the shorter girl holding the syringe filled with blood carefully passed it to Eloise, bowing in respect to her leader, and to the deep red contents of the syringe. Judd began to unfasten Bray's own reality space visor, Bray murmuring in pain and confusion. "Brothers and sisters," Eloise called out suddenly to the viewing gallery. The operating table on which Bray lay was in the middle of a surgery theatre, bright light shining down in the centre, illuminating the patient for all to see. In the gallery, which was more like a sealed chamber divided by glass, there were about 20 observers, most about the same age as Bray. They had one thing in common, however, that united them. Every single one of them wore Zoot-style hats, complete with goggles, and they gazed at Eloise in excitement, an air of collective tension and anticipation as Eloise held the syringe in her hand up to the light. "The blood of Bray and of Zoot," Eloise uttered in awe, as if she was holding an artifact of immense value. Judd had unfastened Bray now from the bed. Bray was barely conscious. With the shorter girl assisting, the 2 of them supported Bray, his arms draped over their shoulders, and they began to drag him away towards the exit doors. "Martin, Amber," Bray quietly murmured in distress to himself, ravaged, tears streaming down his face. Eloise turned from Bray to face the gallery of observers. "We have communed with the Mighty One," she said, "visited his realm, the plane of other existence. Zoot will lead us. We will obey." The gallery chanted in unison in reply.
"Zoot will lead us. We will obey."
Eloise emptied the blood into a glass vial, which she held up for all to see. "The blood of the brother, the blood of Zoot," Eloise intoned, staring at the vial with fascination, her blue eyes intense. "We are of one blood. We are one with Zoot," the gallery chanted in unison in response.
"We are one with Zoot. We are one with Zoot. We are one with Zoot."
All were now staring in reverence. "He will lead and we will follow," Eloise shrieked.
"He will lead and we will follow. He will lead and we will follow."
Approaching the exit door, Bray was drifting in and out of consciousness. His body was weak, his spirits low, his mind confused, all a scramble. Repelled by the bizarre goings-on, Bray just about had the energy to turn his head to one side to look behind him. To his horror, he saw Eloise sip from the vial, blood overspilling around her lips. The gallery erupted into loud, rhythmical chants, which resonated in the medical theatre, as if shaking the very foundations of the building itself. The last thing Bray was aware of was the continuing chanting of his brother's name from the gallery before he lost consciousness.
Zoot! Zoot! Zoot!
On the opposite side of the gallery, in a private viewing platform, a figure stood in the shadows surrounded by his fellow council members. They were all wearing blue flowing robes. One, the Guardian, gazed intently at the proceedings and slowly broke out into a manic smile.